Hey students, we are live here on the Loving Bethel YouTube page. I figured I'm going to do a devotional here just so that I can, this just actually just saves me a little time. I don't have to edit it because I can just do it live and then it will be ready on YouTube. So today we're going to jump right in. It's 1 Peter chapter 2 verses 18 through 25. If you have not read this yet, if you're watching live, which most of you probably are not, so hit pause, go ahead and read, jot down things that stand out to you. Jot down any questions you have. Think about things that apply to your life, and think about things that you think other people may need to hear. And we'll talk about some of those things, hopefully. And if you have, maybe you'll think of things that I didn't think of. I'll think of things that you didn't think of. It's perfect. So this Peter is in this section is a lot more so when we're going to start getting into the ideas of suffering. So Peter's talking about suffering for your faith. If you beyond the walls of being in church, in the youth room, claim to be a follower of Christ with both your words and your actions, you will suffer for your faith. It's just a reality because it's a truth of the Bible that we will suffer for our faith throughout the course of our lives. It's how we respond and how we act in those times of suffering that really can prove our faith genuine. It talks a lot about perseverance in the Bible. So Peter talks about honor and credit. He says in verse 19, he says, "For it is commendable if a man bears up under the pain of unjust suffering because he is conscious of God." So remember that an element of our salvation, like I just said, is enduring through the persecution of our faith. That's verse 19. Verse 20 talks about credit. "But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God." So sometimes in our lives we scratch and we claw to receive justice for the injustices in our lives so that we get the credit, so that we get the revenge, we get our way, so the other side will know that they were wrong. All we're doing when we're doing this, when we're trying to give the credit to ourselves, is we're just viewing our lives in the scope of, through the lens of our finite lives here on earth. We are not considering the scope of eternity. So you must view your life, especially the injustices, through the lens of eternity. Because God is saying that the credit, the honor, being commended in the eyes of God comes from suffering for doing good and enduring it. Now, I'm not saying that you should put your rights aside, your morals aside, whatever. However, let your default response to injustice and suffering be submission before God first. So what is the credit, the reward that Peter is talking about here? He's talking about the inheritance in heaven that cannot perish, spoil, or fade. That's been earlier in the book. What we will receive is far greater than any revenge or any earthly credit or any accolades here on earth. We're going to receive an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. Credit here on earth is fleeting. It's in one door and out the other. It is quick and it is fast and it is fleeting. So ultimately, we are storing up our inheritance and getting something even greater, not just not just in heaven, but right now in relationship with God. Peter mentions that this is our obligation. It is our duty. Verse 21. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving an example that you should follow in his steps. Suffering is not a detour in life. This is what you are called to do, to be criticized, to be ignored, to be mistreated, to be pushed aside. And I know that's difficult to hear, and it's not our calling to just to hope for that, but ultimately part of being Christian means those things are going to come. So how do I do this? So in your situation, you may have to ask, okay, am I under some kind of authority? If yes, then you can always plead with someone in authority to do what you know is right if you know that they're doing something that is immoral or causing you to sin. And you do have rights as an employee, if you're in a job, as a student, whatever to have accommodations made for you and your beliefs. That is a part of our rights. We can do that as Christians if we feel like if we're going through a suffering that is causing us sin, we do have rights to ask for accommodations, ask for things to change so that we can, still be living the life that, because in America we have religious freedom. So next question, how did you do this? Does what they are doing, the opposite side, question the truth of God? Because Jesus took plenty of abuse. but usually didn't speak out unless the truth of God and his existence were in question. Are you being commanded to act against your faith or your conscience? Is your witness at stake? If so, ranting and raving about your rights, beliefs, your faith aren't the answer. Perhaps it's having that quiet confidence in God first, believing that he will get you through the situation, the suffering. This is usually, almost always, better for your witness and better for you showing others what the love of God is about, what your life toward Jesus is all about. We aren't to try and be similar to the pattern. We want to trace that pattern as closely as possible to the situations in life. Peter first goes to Scripture. Despite spending years alongside Jesus, he talks about how he fulfilled Scripture. They hurled insults at Jesus. He suffered. Instead, he entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. Jesus was spot on. I misread. Jesus was spat on, whipped, beaten. Even before that, was suffering under the greatest act of injustice the world has ever seen. Jesus dying on the cross was the greatest injustice the world has ever known. And let's be real about this too. Jesus was fully God. If he wanted to, he could have enacted the ultimate revenge on those people, calling upon the angels to come and drive these people into the ground. Like with one word, Jesus could have destroyed them because he was Jesus. But instead, Jesus showed the ultimate example by submitting himself. He entrusted himself to God who judges justly. This isn't just a one-on-one on how to be stoic and brave through trials. It is entrusting God to come through and do what is right. Whether that happens or not today or 50, let me say that again. It is about trusting in God to come through and do what is right. Whether that happens now, tomorrow, or 20 years from now, we have to give ourselves up to God and believe in him that he is a just judge. So that's our devotional for today. It is about not just staying stoic and calm in the face of adversity, suffering, trials, whatever. It's about giving ourselves over to God and trusting in him that he's going to get you through and he's going to push that situation through in the way that he wants, because God's going to ultimately get his will and God's ultimately going to get his glory. So that's today's devotional, and we will see you on the next one.